Hi, I'm Paul Friedman, founder of the Marriage Foundation, and the topic we're going to address today is how can I save my marriage and stop divorce? Hi, I'm Paul Friedman, and this topic is one of urgency, I imagine, for you, because how can I save my marriage and stop divorce speaks of an imminent calamity, doesn't it? And it really is it's a very deep topic. So instead of giving you this, well, try this and try that kind of response to this question, I'm going to give you a mini education about what marriage is all about, so you could compare that to how you have been living your marriage, and that will give you a perspective that until now you haven't had. Now, I'm very familiar with divorce because until 2001, I was a divorce mediator. I've even spoken at Second Saturday, which is a support group for women at that time who were getting a divorce. Now it's expanded into men, but at that time it was just women. But I've spoken to both men and women about getting a divorce and the simplest way to do that. And then a couple asked me to help them save their marriage. Well, I didn't know anything about saving a marriage. I myself was divorced. But I just somehow automatically agreed. And I said, okay, but give me a few months to look into how I should do this. Now, at the time, the premise was that and at that time it was the trend that everything was about communication. And your communication isn't good if you're having this problem of wanting to save your marriage and divorce. But what I discovered is that communication is a small, important, but a small part of the marriage compact. And what I'd like to do is give you insight into what marriage is really all about, so you have this comparison, so that your perspective shifts, so that you can then seek the tools to revamp your marriage. Because I'm going to tell you right now, remember that was back in 2001. So I saved that couple's marriage, and based on what I had learned, I started working with individuals, taking notes. I've written 2 books. I've taught more Western psychologists, very well-known couples counselors and marriage counselors, about how to do it. And so what I actually offer is pretty good stuff. And I also want to assure you before I get going that your marriage is probably savable. When I say probably, I don't mean 30%, 50%, I mean 90%. Chances are good you can save it. And so otherwise I wouldn't be doing this, because we started this foundation, it's nonprofit. I do ask you at this time to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and let's dive into this. So you have been living marriage, and I have identified actually 4 killers of marriage. And you'll be able to relate to this because you've been living your marriage with these burdens. The number 1 killer of marriage that is unquestionably part of your relationship, I call it overfamiliarity. What that means basically is that after you got together, and it varies with people based on their own individual temperament, but what happens is you become over-familiar with each other. And both of you start taking each other for granted. And I use kind of crude illustrations, like the first time you farted in front of your spouse, or you started using language that you didn't when you first met. Things like that. Kind of crude, but it illustrates what I'm talking about. Is that you no longer regarded your husband or your wife as the goddess, the god, the king, or the queen, and your behavior, your responses to them were not what they were when you first started seeing each other, when that spark of love, when you recognized your soulmates, and you are. We're not going to give up. One of the things that I learned is that if you give up, then it's over. You're not going to save your marriage, and you are going to get a divorce. So don't give up. Don't let that thought creep in. So that's the first killer of marriage that undoubtedly that's a cancer that's taken over your marriage. The second killer of marriage is poor communication. And it's similar, and it could be a product of overfamiliarity, but basically the way you communicate is not marriage friendly. I'm going to put it that way. So look at it in a binary way. There is marriage friendly communication and there is non-beneficial communication. Marriage friendly is the way you treated each other when you met each other. And that means that you were always complimentary, supportive, loving, and part of communication is the face, how you smile or don't smile. And by now, some of you are going, yeah, he or she has totally taken me for granted. And I'm going to tell you a secret here. I realized pretty quickly that couples counseling doesn't work because the tendency is for the individual, both individuals, to blame the other. And then you're not going to get anywhere. What you need to do, and this is gospel, is you need to take full responsibility for moving your marriage forward, revamping your marriage. And you as an individual can do it. The result of this thought, and we've been doing this for over 25 years, the result is that we have a course for men and we have a course for women. And we address different things in each course based on gender. And it's been very successful to do it that way. And so you learn how to communicate and it becomes no longer a problem. Now, I'm going to go a bit further, even though you're not taking the course right now, and tell you that everything that is beneficial is based in love. And everything that is not beneficial, in other words, marriage friendly, non-marriage friendly, everything that is not beneficial is based on selfishness, one degree or another. And so this is one of the cornerstones of marriage, is learning how to communicate in a way that is infusing love into your marriage. Makes sense? The third killer of marriage is a business mentality. Some people use the term transactional. That, okay, honey, I just cleaned the garage. I expect you to keep the living room and our bedroom clean. You see, now I'm just using that as an illustration. The point is, and it goes to the fourth, but you have to get rid of that consciousness of what I do, I expect something in return. And the fourth killer is expectations, you see. When we find our soulmate, we can't expect them to be on the same page as us. They're different people. And they are progressing through life individually. Now, ideally, both of you understand that marriage is a spiritual, very deep spiritual path that you walk individually, but together, because that is its nature. But even if your spouse doesn't have that, shall we say, awareness, if you have it, you could still have the most amazing marriage there is. And this was what I discovered. So how do you save your marriage? How do you avoid this divorce? Well, you have to first kind of study marriage. And this is what we do in the course. And frankly, some people are able to move their marriage forward just by reading one of my books. A lot of people. But usually when you're to this degree, when it's hanging on by a thread, that's why we have the courses. Because that way I could take you step by step into this modality of self-awareness, where you get educated, where you learn how to do the things that you need to do, which includes cleansing your own mind of all these non-beneficial thoughts, and at the same time, opening your heart. You may say, no, my heart is open, and I beg to differ with you. Because when your heart is fully open and the ego's not getting in the way, it's impossible to not have an amazing marriage, regardless of how your partner is with you. It's just a fact. And 25 years of experience and thousands of people who have followed this path to redefining their marriage will attest to it. You could look at our reviews. So, it was a bit lengthy. I apologize for that, but I'm sure you got something out of it. Again, I ask you to subscribe. I ask you to like the video, and I hope to see you again. Go to our website, see our offerings. I'm Paul Friedman. God bless you, and take care.